somebody that she knew was shot in that incident.
Was that to send a message to her, or was she expected
Oh,
to be
I think
there?
so. No, she wasn't expected to be there.
Right.
She left there long ago. But I think it was a message to her, to scare her.
Yeah.
But of course, it's all plausibly deniable.
Mm.
I've given you this data and this information, but I can't prove
No.
that there was a connection. It could have been just complete coincidence. I can't prove anything. So it's plausibly deniable, which
Yeah.
is the way that these things happen, as you know.
Off topic slightly, what do you think about these school shootings? Do you think they are the people that we're told do them? You know, the kid that's taken Prozac and played video games, or is it, has somebody gone there and he fits the bill for the blame? Because it's always the person they blame is always the person who's committed suicide at the end of it. You know, they're never there to defend themselves, basically.
That's a very tricky one to answer. I think there seems to be a mixture of things going on. I'm now coming to the conclusion that the MK Ultra program, which was the mind control, CIA mind control program, is rather more extensive than most people realise or are willing to accept. Even those in the alternative knowledge community or conspiracy community, whatever name you might give to it. I believe that in the case of Virginia Tech, that was a black ops operation, and although there may have been some student guy involved, I think, as I understand it, he left campus and then came back. That was what the official story said. This guy went off campus, got another gun or something, or made a videotape, and then he went back onto the campus, which was a very strange set of events. However, going back to your point about the taking Prozac and stuff, the drugs do seem to have a detrimental effect. A member of my family, his wife was taking Prozac, and she ended up becoming very violent towards him. Right. So I think, not on everyone of course, but in many cases these drugs do have a negative effect. And when you put that into the mix of other things, it just becomes a very confusing picture. One, I think, in which you can say the drugs are not really, they don't really overall do much good, and there are much better ways to sort of deal with the problems which they are set to solve. So if we go back to the story with Judy Wood. So she'd done this directed energy paper. It had been discussed a lot. There was very much an effort to ridicule her work and ridicule her conclusions. And Steve Jones and his group repeatedly did this. They had this website called the Journal of 9/11 Studies, which amused us because if you spell this out, the Journal of 9/11 Studies with the words, and then you take the initials of those words, it's JONES. So we found that quite amusing. And they published a series of about 5 or 6 articles claiming that the directed energy weapon hypothesis was ridiculous or unrealistic, and we had a paper published which was called The Overwhelming Implausibility of the Use of Directed Energy Weapons at the World Trade Center, and that was by Greg Jenkins again. But I thought that this Journal of 9/11 Studies was out to find the truth behind 9/11, not specifically to debunk the directed energy hypothesis. And a lot of what they put in there didn't really account for the evidence, like saying the towed cars were moved, the toasted cars were towed or moved. They had no evidence that was actually done. They didn't have any pictures of tow trucks. They didn't have any witness testimony. They just put in a statement that these cars had been moved, for example. So we didn't really take this seriously. What Judy discovered in dealing with this junk was that these people were trying to take the attention of certain types of evidence. One was the dust going up, because some of the dust actually rose up too high after the steel was destroyed. And the other was what happened on the ground. Certain effects were seen on the ground, and Dr. Wood later discovered they'd shipped in dirt. They got sort of like potting soil, and they'd put it over the site of the World Trade Center towers where they were destroyed. They'd actually put soil on top of the debris.
Right.
So, and she's got pictures of this, got multiple photos of like fresh potting compost, even on top of a fire truck that had been destroyed. We've got some actually on a fire truck that had been destroyed. So we know that the soil can't have come out of the World Trade Center because it's a concreted area. There might have been a few pot plants and things like that in the offices. Yeah. But we know that primarily it was steel, concrete, office furniture, that sort of thing. So where did this dirt come from? Why were they putting it on the ground? And the other thing which we obviously had been talked about was nuclear reactions. So we wondered if there was some type of nuclear reaction going on. And the way that she also described it was molecular dissociation. And you'd have to look at the study to go through this data. But what Judy would have also noticed, being a mechanical engineer, was the rusting of the steel. At ground zero, the steel had rusted very, very quickly, far more quickly than you would expect in a normal situation. We'd got cars that had rusted in 48 hours, and cars have got steel components. We've got cars with the engine blocks disappeared. No engine blocks in them. How can thermite cause that when it's supposed to have been in the towers? If it was heat from the towers, then why weren't we've got the film of people being running away from the dust cloud and being engulfed by it. If it was a hot cloud, then why weren't they burned? Why didn't they fall to the ground in agony and die? That didn't happen. We know that the cloud was cool. So what was it? If it was a nuclear explosions generate a lot of heat. Where was the heat? There was no heat. What burned these cars when there was no heat? We have witness accounts. The cars blowing up, literally bursting into flames while the person is walking past them. We've got witness accounts of that happening. We've got the pictures of these fires. So what's going on? So we had all these questions and data that Judy had put on the table, and we didn't really have any answers. So we move on to the next part of the story, which almost brings us up to date. Mid-November 2007, we were looking, and by this time I'd been established quite close contact with Judy through a friend. We talk a lot on Skype, because you can talk for free on Skype. And we'd started looking at something called the Hutchison Effect, because Judy had said it was directed energy. So what types of energy have we got? Well, you've got microwave weapons that we know about. We've also got things like MTEL, which you might not have heard of. That's the mobile tactical high energy laser. It's in use in Iraq. Right. It is like a high powered laser weapon, and it can knock out missiles in flight. And it works. It's real. It's in use. It's a real thing. And you've got Boeing's Airborne Laser Project. The other thing I was kind of missed out of the story was that we'd found a lot of connections between directed energy manufacturers and 9/11. Go back to the NIST reports. Who did the plane simulations for the supposed plane crashes? It was a company called ARA, Applied Research Associates. They are a supplier and a manufacturer of directed energy weapons. We look at Norman Mineta, who was the Transport Secretary. Norman Mineta testified before the 9/11 Commission. He said that VP Cheney, Vice President Cheney, and him were in a bunker, and this plane was approaching the Pentagon. And Mineta swears that Cheney was told by a young man who came into this bunker, "The plane is 60 miles out, sir, what should we do?" And then he came in again a minute later, "The plane is 50 miles out, what should we do?" Then he said, "The plane is 40 miles out, does the order still stand?" In other words, were they going to shoot the plane down? Although that wasn't said in this testimony. So there was this bogus story that Mineta was putting out, that Cheney had refused to give a shoot-down order. They knew this supposed plane was going to hit the Pentagon, but Cheney refused to give a shoot-down order before it would do any damage. That was the story that Mineta gave before the 9/11 Commission. It's another bogus story. Guess who Mineta used to work for? He was the Vice President of Lockheed Martin, one of the biggest directed energy weapons manufacturers in the world. So he was in the defence contractors. So if you want to know who did 9/11, well, it was the military-industrial complex that did it. It wasn't Cheney, it wasn't Bush. Sure, they knew about it, but they didn't do it. It's a military-industrial complex that did it. And so we